The German fighter burst into flames first. For a brief second, the aircraft hung in the sky above the Kuban region like a burning torch. Then it rolled onto its side and plunged toward the ground. The Soviet pilot who had fired the fatal burst did not stay to watch the crash. He was already searching the sky for the next threat. In the air war over southern Russia during the spring of 1943, a pilot who stopped paying attention for even a moment could easily become the next victim. The man in the cockpit was one of the Soviet Union's rising fighter aces. He had already survived countless missions. He had faced some of Germany's best pilots. He knew exactly what kind of machine he trusted with his life. But if an American pilot had looked closely at his aircraft, he might have been confused. The Soviet ace was not flying a Yak fighter. He was not flying a La-5. He was not flying one of the famous Soviet aircraft often associated with victory on the Eastern Front. He was flying an American P-39 Airacobra. That fact raises a mystery that still surprises many people today. How did an American fighter that earned a mixed reputation in Western air forces become one of the most successful aircraft in Soviet service? Why did some of the Soviet Union's greatest fighter aces choose to fly it? And why did nearly half of the Soviet Union's highest-scoring fighter pilots score many of their victories in a machine that others considered deeply flawed? The answer begins thousands of miles away from the Kuban battlefield. It begins in American factories. When the Bell Aircraft Corporation designed the P-39 Airacobra in the late 1930s, it looked unlike almost anything else flying in the world. Most fighters placed their engines in the nose. The P-39 did something different. Engineers placed the Aleksandr V 1710 engine behind the pilot. A long shaft ran beneath the cockpit and connected the engine to the propeller in the front. The design gave the aircraft a unique appearance. It also created room for something unusual. A powerful 37mm cannon sat inside the nose. This weapon was enormous for a fighter aircraft of the period. Every time the cannon fired, it could tear apart enemy aircraft with devastating. Few fighters in the world carried such heavy firepower. On paper, the Airacobra looked promising. It was fast at lower altitudes. It was heavily armed. It handled well in certain situations. Many people believed it had a bright future. Then reality arrived. As the war expanded, American and British pilots increasingly found themselves fighting at high altitude. Bomber escorts often operated above 20,000 feet. Strategic air campaigns pushed aircraft higher and higher into the sky. That was where the P-39's biggest weakness appeared. Early versions had lost their turbo supercharger during development. Without it, performance dropped sharply at higher altitudes. As enemy fighters and bombers operated higher, the Airacobra struggled to keep. Many Western pilots concluded that the aircraft was disappointing. Some disliked its high-altitude limitations. Others worried about its unusual handling characteristics. Over time, newer fighters such as the P-47 Thunderbolt and P-51 Mustang attracted greater attention. The Airacobra seemed destined to become a footnote. But history had other plans. In June 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa. The largest invasion in human history exploded across the Soviet frontier. Thousands of German aircraft attacked Soviet airfields. Entire Soviet air units were destroyed on the ground. The Red Air Force suffered catastrophic losses during the first months of the campaign. The Soviet Union desperately needed aircraft. Every available source mattered. As Allied cooperation expanded, the United States began supplying military equipment through the Lend-Lease program. Trucks, tanks, locomotives, food, radios, raw materials, and aircraft flowed toward the Soviet Union. Among them was the P-39. At first glance, it did not seem like a perfect match, yet something remarkable happened after the aircraft arrived. Instead of rejecting it, many Soviet pilots embraced it, and not just ordinary pilots, the very best pilots, the aces. To understand why, you must first understand that the Eastern Front was a completely different air war. Many people imagine all fighter combat during World War II as essentially the same. It was not. American air forces often fought high above Europe while escorting strategic bombers. British pilots frequently faced similar conditions. The Soviet experience was different. Much of the fighting on the Eastern Front occurred at relatively low and medium altitudes. Aircraft supported ground troops. Fighters protected advancing armies. Pilots attacked enemy formations close to the battlefield. This environment changed everything. The weakness that hurt the P-39 in Western service became far less important. Meanwhile, its strengths became extremely valuable. At lower altitudes, the Airacobra could be fast and aggressive. Its powerful armament made it deadly. Its radio equipment was often superior to that found in many Soviet aircraft. Visibility was generally good. The aircraft could dive effectively and hit hard. The machine had finally found the kind of war it was built to fight. One man understood this better than almost anyone else. His name was Aleksandr Pokryshkin. Pokryshkin would become one of the most famous fighter aces in Soviet history. He was intelligent, innovative, and willing to challenge old assumptions. Unlike some commanders who followed rigid doctrine, Pokryshkin constantly studied combat and searched for better methods. When he began flying the P-39, he quickly recognized its potential. Rather than forcing the aircraft into tactics that did not suit it, he adapted tactics to exploit its strengths. This was a crucial difference. Many unsuccessful aircraft are not necessarily bad machines. Sometimes they are simply used incorrectly. Pokryshkin understood how to maximize speed, firepower, communication, and position. He emphasized teamwork. He emphasized situational awareness. He emphasized attacking from advantageous positions rather than engaging in wasteful turning contests. The results were extraordinary. Victory after victory followed. As his reputation grew, other pilots paid attention. Soon, the P-39 was earning a fearsome reputation in Soviet hands. German pilots operating over the Kuban and other sectors increasingly encountered Airacobras flown by highly skilled opponents. The mystery deepened. How could an aircraft viewed with skepticism in some Western circles become one of the deadliest fighters on the Eastern Front? The answer was not just the aircraft. It was the combination of aircraft and pilot. Another famous ace, Grigory Rechkalov, also became closely associated with the P-39. Like Pokryshkin, he accumulated an impressive combat record. So did Dmitry Glinka. So did Boris Glinka. Again and again, elite Soviet pilots achieved remarkable success in Airacobras. Statistics began telling a fascinating story. Although Soviet forces operated many fighter types during the war, a striking number of top aces scored major portions of their victories while flying the P-39. The aircraft was becoming an ace-maker. Yet it would be wrong to suggest that the Airacobra was perfect. It was not. Soviet pilots knew its limitations. They understood where it performed well and where it did not. Combat veterans respected the aircraft without romanticizing it. That practical attitude helped them succeed. They did not expect miracles. They expected results. And results were exactly what they got. The fighting over the Kuban in 1943 provided some of the clearest evidence. This campaign became one of the largest aerial struggles on the Eastern Front. Day after day, fighters clashed above rivers, mountains, villages, and battlefields. The skies became crowded with danger. Pilots launched before sunrise. They landed with empty ammunition belts. Many never returned at all. In these brutal conditions, the qualities of the P-39 proved valuable. Its heavy cannon could destroy enemy aircraft with surprisingly few hits. A skilled pilot who placed shots accurately could inflict devastating damage. Its radio equipment helped coordination between pilots. This advantage is often overlooked today. Modern audiences tend to focus on speed or armament. But communication could mean the difference between life and death. Pilots who could share information quickly often gained a major tactical edge. The Soviet Air Force increasingly improved its combat effectiveness during the war. Better training, improved tactics, stronger leadership, and growing experience all contribute. The Airacobra arrived at exactly the right time to become part of that transformation. As 1943 turned into 1944, Soviet forces gained momentum across the Eastern Front. German armies that had once advanced relentlessly now found themselves retreating. The Red Air Force grew stronger. Its pilots gained confidence. Its aces accumulated victories. And the P-39 remained a familiar sight. The aircraft served in numerous sectors. It fought above Ukraine. It fought over the Black Sea region. It fought during offensives that pushed westward toward Eastern Europe. Each campaign added new chapters to its reputation. German pilots learned to respect it. Soviet pilots learned to trust it. Mechanics learned how to keep it operational under difficult conditions. The relationship between aircraft and pilot became something special. One reason many Soviet aviators appreciated the Airacobra was its concentration of firepower. The nose-mounted cannon and machine guns allowed accurate shooting because the weapons fired directly ahead. Pilots did not need to worry as much about convergence settings that affected wing-mounted guns. When an enemy aircraft appeared in the gun sight, a well-aimed burst could be devastating. This mattered enormously in combat. Air battles often unfolded in seconds. Opportunities appeared and vanished instantly. A fighter that could deliver heavy damage quickly possessed a valuable advantage. Yet perhaps the most important factor was psychological. Successful pilots trusted the aircraft. Trust is difficult to measure, but it matters. When a pilot believes in his machine, he flies differently. He makes decisions with confidence. He focuses on the enemy rather than worrying about his own aircraft. Many Soviet aces developed exactly that relationship with the P-39. The aircraft earned their respect through performance rather than promises. Years later, when historians examined victory records, a remarkable pattern emerged. Some of the Soviet Union's highest-scoring aces had achieved many of their successes in Airacobras. The numbers forced people to reconsider old assumptions. Perhaps the aircraft had never truly been a failure. Perhaps it had simply been judged according to the wrong standard. After all, an aircraft designed for one environment may struggle in another. A machine that seems average in one theater may become exceptional elsewhere. War is filled with such examples. The P-39 Airacobra became one of the most famous. By 1945, the war in Europe was drawing toward its conclusion. German resistance was collapsing. Soviet armies pushed relentlessly west. The Red Air Force dominated skies that had once belonged largely to the Luftwaffe. Among the aircraft contributing to that victory was the same American fighter that many observers had underestimated years earlier. The P-39 had traveled a remarkable journey. It began as an unconventional American design. It survived criticism. It crossed oceans through the Lend-Lease program. It arrived in a desperate Soviet Union fighting for survival. Then it found the environment where its strengths mattered most. Most importantly, it found pilots who understood exactly how to use it. That is the real answer to the mystery. The story is not simply about an airplane. It is about adaptation. It is about understanding strengths and weaknesses. It is about matching the right tool to the right. The Soviet Union's greatest aces did not succeed because the P-39 was magical. They succeeded because they recognized what the aircraft could do better than most people realized. Aleksandr Pokryshkin and other elite pilots looked at the Airacobra and saw possibilities where others saw limitations. history rewarded that insight. Today, when people discuss legendary fighters of World War II, names like the Mustang, Spitfire, and Messerschmitt often dominate the conversation. Yet far away on the vast Eastern Front, another fighter quietly built its own legacy. It did not always receive the headlines. It did not always receive the glory. But in the hands of Soviet aces, it became one of the deadliest fighters of the war. And that is why one of the strangest truths of World War II remains so fascinating. An American fighter that many expected to fade into obscurity ended up helping create some of the Soviet Union's greatest air legends. The mystery plane nobody expected had found its place in history. And decades later, its story still reminds us that success in war is rarely determined by reputation alone. Sometimes the difference between failure and greatness is simply finding the battlefield where a machine truly belongs.